Hey guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Precious and I like to read. So today I decided I'm gonna do a little reading wrap up and tell you guys what I've read recently. Because these like actually perfect. Cleanse myself of that book like I was expecting to love it. Maybe a little controversial. I'm getting flashbacks. If you're an OG, you know that I used to do these a lot. I used to try to do like monthly ones or one like every other month, but I felt like I just didn't read enough to be doing wrap-ups like that, so I kind of just stopped doing it. But now I want to like bring them back. I think I want to do one like every few months, maybe every 4 months. I feel like that's a good amount of time for me to get a good amount of books in. So here's what I've read so far. So I have 10 books to talk about, and I'll start with my oldest read, like the first book I read in January, and then we'll work our way to April. But the very first book that I read is Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. I'm getting flashbacks. This book was a 5-star. This is the 5th and most recent book of the Magnolia Park series. I feel like everybody in the romance world knows this series and everybody knows how much it's loved. But if you don't know, Magnolia Park is basically about a friend group in London who also happen to be like rich socialites. And we basically just follow their lives. And the author, Jessa Hastings, kind of just creates a whole world around Magnolia and then BJ, her boyfriend. And we just see their lives and all the crazy stuff they go through. So this book is just a continuation and really an ending of the Magnolia Parks books. Now the series is not done yet because in the series there's 2 types of books. There's Magnolia Parks books and then there's Daisy Hates books. And Magnolia Parks books follows Magnolia Parks and her life, and then Daisy Hates follows a girl named Daisy Hates and her life. So there are still gonna be Daisy Hates books, but as for Magnolia Parks, there aren't gonna be any more Magnolia Parks books. So reading this was very like bittersweet because we finally get to see Magnolia Parks get her ending. But I just love this book. In this series, I've given like all of the books 5 stars. The characters are just so well developed and they're so like complex and they're messy, but they also like care for each other so much. And obviously you see Magnolia and BJ's relationship and you're able to see how strong their relationship is because they go through so much. And by the end of the book, you're like, wow, I can't believe like they've gone through as much stuff as they've gone through. And this book definitely is like heavier with like emotion because something happens in the previous book and it just comes into here and it's very sad. But we see how the characters, how Magnolia and how BJ deal with it and how it affects their relationship. And then obviously a big part of the series is the found family and we get to see all of the friendships within the book. It's not just a romance book, it's like so much more, and I think Jessa Hastings does such a good job of like balancing the family, friendship, and then romance, which I just love. Also, like this book is clearly so long. It's like 700 pages, yet I did not want it to end. Like in the moment while I was reading, like I just knew that this is gonna be the last time like I read a new story from these characters' POV. So like I was really trying to take in everything, and like near the end I was like, oh my gosh, it's like about to be over. And by the end I really was wanting more. Not that like Jessa Hastings leaves anything out, like she ended it great, but I just didn't want the story to end, you know? But yeah, that's what I thought of that. I absolutely loved it. I would recommend this series to anybody who loves romance, drama, family, friendships, and just like really wants to feel something, because this book in the series covers all of that. Okay, next book. I look at this next book and I just think, wow, I read that book. But next I read Haunting Adeline. This is the second book in the cat and mouse duet. The first book is Haunting Adeline. This book is very popular in like the dark romance world. It's known for being like one of the darkest romances you will ever read. If you know me, I love a good dark romance. I will happily admit that. Like if it's done right, it can be really good, really entertaining. But that being said, this was not my cup of tea. I gave it a 2.75. Looking back on it now, maybe I'd give it a 2.5, but either way, it's down there. And usually like, I'm not hard to please. And usually I don't rate something lower than like a 3, unless the book like just really wasn't for me. Now this book is just a continuation of the first book because the first book ends on a cliffhanger. So basically we have Adeline. She falls in love with Zaid, who happens to be her stalker. Now going into the first book, like I knew that that's what the story was about, and there are like heavy trigger warnings before like the book even starts, so I knew what I was getting myself into. But the whole like idea of her just falling in love with her stalker still doesn't completely make sense to me. But at the same time, it's a dark romance. Like I compare like dark romances to like fantasy because a lot of dark romances quite literally are so unrealistic. Like it feels like I'm reading some sort of fantasy book. So the idea of her falling in love with her stalker does not make sense to me at all, but I just let it go. Like I treat it as something I would read read in like a fantasy book because it's a dark romance book. It's not supposed to be realistic. So while I was reading, I kind of pushed that to the side, but I didn't really like how dark it got, especially in this book because this book is way darker than the first one. But going into it, like, obviously I was very aware of the trigger warnings, and I'm not gonna lie, I went through my Wattpad phase where I was reading a lot of dark romance, so I've honestly become like desensitized to a lot of stuff that I read in dark romances, but this was just like so graphic that it just made me like sad. It deals with a lot of heavy topics. Again, read the trigger warnings and definitely like take them seriously, because if you were to just go into this blind, it would feel like being smacked in the face. But all of that was just too graphic for me, and I don't think I've read anything as graphic as this, because it describes just a bunch of triggering scenes in great detail, which just made me like depressed. But as for like the plot of the book itself, I'm not really gonna go into detail with that because it just continues the first book, and I don't want to spoil what happens because at the end of the book something big happens, and that big thing that happens is the plot of this book basically. But let's just say this book is like split up into two parts. The first part, the characters are trying to figure something out, and I'm not gonna lie, the first part did keep me pretty entertained because like I was trying to figure out how they were gonna solve their problem. But by the second part, they kind of solved the problem, so once they solved it, I was just kind of over it. Like, I don't really think the second part of the book was necessary. And as for the characters, they're not my favorite. I still don't understand them. I still don't understand Addie and Zayd's relationship. Like, girl, he may be hot, but like, he stalked you. You know, like, I still kind of can't get over that. But, you know, I guess it's just not for me to understand. Would I recommend this duology? No. But I do think it's fun knowing what other people are talking about when they are referring to really popular books like this. So that's something. Okay, so next book, I needed something to cleanse myself of that book. So I decided to read Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. I love me a good Lauren Asher book, and I had been wanting to start this series. I gave this book a 3.75. I enjoyed it. Basically, we follow Dahlia. Is that her name? So we follow Dahlia and Julian, who are like childhood rivals. Dahlia is a really successful interior designer, and she like has her own show and everything. And then Julian, he is, what does he do? He like sells houses or something. He does real estate. I don't even remember what happens. Hold on. So they both like grew up in this small town, and Dahlia ends up coming back to this small town because of some personal stuff. But something happens between the two of them, and they end up not speaking for years until Dahlia comes back to their small town. And somehow they like end up working together on a project, and we follow that whole storyline. I thought the book was good, but it just felt a little too long. I did enjoy the characters. I remember really liking them together. I enjoy seeing the side characters, and obviously this is like a spin-off series to the Dreamland Billionaire series, so we get to see some of those characters within the book, which I always think is so fun. But I think the thing that like stood out to me the most was just like the vibes of the book. It takes place in this small town. They have a lake, and it's like very summer-esque. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have too much to say about the book, but it was just good. After that, I read Mile High by Liz Tomford. I gave this a 3.5. Looking back on it now, maybe I'd like bump it up a little bit, maybe like a 3.75, because I gave this a 3.75, and I think I like this better, or I like them the same. Anyways, not important. This is the first book in the Windy City series. I was very excited to start it because I just hear such good things about the whole series. But this book follows Xander's and Stevie. Xander is an NHL player, and Stevie is a flight attendant for his team's private plane, and it's just their romance. They're not supposed to be together because there's a rule against fraternizing with the players, but they make it work anyway. I remember thinking that this book just felt really long, which is weird because it's not really that long, and I didn't really like the third act conflict. Like, it just didn't really make any sense to me, but I did love the characters and I love the vibes. I definitely like recommend if you're looking for a good sports romance. But overall, it was good, and it definitely got me excited for the rest of the books in the series. Okay, next book, I read Wretched by Emily McIntyre. This is the third book in the Never After series. So basically the whole series is like dark fairy tale retellings, and the villain gets their happily ever after. And this tells the story of like the Wizard of Oz, which when I was reading this, I was still kind of in my Wicked era, so I was really in the mood for it. I gave this 4 stars. So basically we follow Evelina, who's supposed to be like the Wicked Witch. So Evelina, her family runs like a drug empire, and she's kind of the brains behind the whole operation. And then we have Nick, who is a DEA agent. I don't even know what DEA means, but he's like a government agent, and he is assigned to go undercover and like bust their whole operation. But like a few days before he starts his assignment, he meets this girl and they have a one-night stand, and when he starts his job, the girl happens to be Evelina. So yeah, messy. I really enjoyed this book. After reading this, like, I can proudly say I'm like an Emily McIntyre stan. I just love her stories. Like, they're so fun. I love the whole premise of dark fairy tale retelling, and I think Emily McIntyre does such a good job of doing it. I will say the only thing I didn't really like about the book is that it just felt really fast, and it is really short, but their relationship just felt very physical emotional, which it was, and I wish there was more of an emotional build-up. But other than that, I ate this book up. If you're looking to get into dark romances, I would definitely recommend Emily McIntyre because her books are very entertaining and they're very quick to get through. So yeah, definitely recommend. Okay, the next book I read is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This was my first thriller of the year. Yay, she's branching out. But this book has been on my radar for the longest time. Obviously, everybody's like read it already. Everybody loves it, and they're making a movie out of it. And the fact that they're making a movie out of it made me push it up on my TBR because I really want to watch this movie. So yeah, I read this and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was just so good and I read it so fast. But basically, we have Millie who is looking for a job, and she gets a job as a housemaid with this family, and she's desperate for a job and she's having a hard time finding a job. So as soon as she gets the job, she takes it, but she starts working for this family, a mom, a dad, and then a daughter, and she quickly realizes that the mom and the daughter are psycho, and things just kind of escalate from there. Like, she's kind of trapped in this job because she has nowhere else to go. She was actually homeless, and this is like a live-in maid position, so she gets to live in the house. So if she quits, she will have nowhere else to live, and she also needs the money. I don't really read thrillers often. I probably read like 2 or 3 a year, so I may not be the best person to be getting thriller recommendations from, but this was just so good. Like, it was fast-paced. I was engaged the whole time when I wasn't reading it. Like, I wanted to be reading it because I wanted to figure out how everything was gonna end. There's also like a little bit of romance in it if like you squint really hard. I will say that the plot twist was a little predictable, but the way it played out, like, it still very much shocked me. But I had such a good time reading this, and I definitely wish I read this sooner. So if for some reason this is still on your TBR, I definitely recommend reading it because it's so good. Okay, next we have The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy, which I gave a 4.5. We have Gigi and Ryder. They're both in college and they both play hockey. Gigi is trying to get on the Olympic team, but she's lacking some skills and she needs help like getting better at them. And Ryder wants to work this coaching gig at a summer camp that is run by none other than Garrett Graham. If you know the Off-Campus series, you know that this is like a spin-off of the Off-Campus series, but the camp is run by Garrett Graham. Garrett Graham happens to be Gigi's dad. So they make a deal. Ryder helps Gigi work on her skills in exchange for her putting in a good word for Ryder with her dad so he can get the coaching job. I hope I just explained that right because that's like very confusing to explain. But I thought this book was really fun. I loved Gigi and Ryder, and I thought they were perfect for each other, and their banter was just so good. Ryder was like the typical bad boy who you end up loving in the end, and then I remember really loving Gigi and her humor. I loved getting to know these new characters, but also like since it's a spin-off, you get the original characters from the original books, which I was absolutely eating up, and I thought the whole plot was good. I do remember thinking it was a little long, but other than that, I really liked it. But yeah, this was a fun time. Next we have The Right Move by Liz Tomford, which is the second book in the Windy City series, right after Mile High. Now this book I had very high expectations for because Ryan Shea, if you know Ryan Shea, you know, like, everybody loves Ryan Shea. And let me just say, everything you hear about Ryan Shea is completely true. He is amazing. I gave it a 4.5, so it follows Indy and Ryan. So Ryan is actually the brother of Stevie in Mile High, and he's a professional basketball player. And then Indy, she is a flight attendant who works with Stevie, and Indy and Stevie are like best friends. So in this book, we see Indy, she's struggling and she needs a place to stay. And Stevie's like, oh, you should just stay with my brother. Like, he has room in his apartment. And that is what ends up happening. But this whole book was just so good. They're opposites. So in the beginning, they do not get along because like they just clash. But over time, they realize, oh, we have more in common than we thought. Again, I love the characters in this series. Ryan, he was just like so sweet. Now I understand why so many people love Ryan Shea, and I have become one of those people because he's like actually perfect. And then Indy, I loved her. I loved her personality. I loved her vibe. She's very relatable, and the plot itself was really good. The only thing I didn't really like is that it did feel a bit dragged out. But overall, this book was like the perfect combination of cute and sweet, but like also spicy and dramatic, which I love. Okay, next, I read Powerless by Elsie Silver. I gave this a 3.75. This is the third book in the Chestnut Spring series, which is like a small town cowboy romance series, and each book in the series follows a different brother. This book follows Jasper, who is a hockey player, and Sloane, who is his childhood best friend. And Sloane has always had a crush on Jasper, but Jasper's a few years older, so Jasper never really like felt the same way towards her until they got older. And by the time that they're older, like, she is kind of over her crush, not really, but like she claims that she's over it, and she ends up engaged to someone else, but like she clearly does not love this man. And Jasper is at a place where he's realizing that he does like Sloane, but like she's engaged. The story, it just wasn't what I was expecting. Like, I was expecting like way more from it. Like, I was expecting to love it, but it was kind kind of slow and very dragged out. Like from the beginning it was clear why they should be together. Like no doubt in my mind they're perfect for each other and they clearly love each other, yet it took so long for them to get together. But I did like their relationship. Again, I think they're perfect for each other, but it was just so dragged out to the point where it just felt boring. Also, this book was a little on the heavier side, which there was like a trigger warning in the beginning, but still it was like heavier than I thought it was gonna be. It was just like sad stuff was happening, so it just kind of put a damper on the whole book. But other than that, it was not bad. Like I love the characters, I love the world, I like the couple, but definitely my least favorite in the series. Okay, and the last book I have to talk about is Happy Place by Emily Henry, and I also gave this a 3.75, which may be a little controversial because I know a lot of people love this book. So the couple in this is Harry and Wynn, and they have just broken off their engagement. However, they're in the same friend group and they have not told any of their friends. In this friend group, they're like best friends. They've been friends since college and now they're like in their 30s. But every year they take this trip to a vacation house that one of them owns. So it's time for them to go on their yearly trip. But this trip that they're going on is actually their very last trip in the vacation house that they stay in because it's up for sale. And so it's their last trip, and Wynn and Harry want to tell their friends, but they don't want to ruin the vacation. So they make a deal. They're like, okay, we'll tell them after the vacation. So during the vacation, they have to pretend like they're still engaged, even though they're not. Overall, I thought it was good, but I do think it's a little overhyped. Like I expected it to be like so good, like groundbreaking. And I think the thing with Emily Henry books is like, if you can really like relate to the characters, then you will think her books are amazing. And I don't think I was able to like relate to any of the characters in that way. I do think this is a really good book for summer, and it's really good if you're like looking for a book that focuses a lot on friendships, because at times it felt like the romance really did just take a back seat and like we were focusing on what was happening within the friend group. Also, through a lot of the book you're kind of trying to figure out why did they break up, and eventually you get the pieces. And personally, like I just didn't really like the reason why they weren't together. Like I'm not gonna say too much because I don't want to spoil, but I just think the breakup could have easily been avoided. Overall, it was good. I kind of think it's overhyped, but I think if you can relate to the characters, then I can see why you would love this. Okay, that is what I've read recently. My throat is getting sore because I've been talking for so long, but it was worth it because I had such a good time doing this. I love talking about books. Like literally part of the reason why I started a YouTube channel was to talk about books because I had no one else to talk about books to. So I'm very grateful that I can talk to you guys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Stay tuned for what I have planned this summer. I want to try to post twice a week. We'll see how that goes, but definitely subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. Comment if you read any of these books and tell me your thoughts, or let me know what you're reading right now. But yeah, that's it. I hope the rest of your day is amazing and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye!